Hey beautiful people. All right, so we're gonna do a comparison video. Every once in a while I'm gonna get them all in. I've got some more to do, talking about dupes and everything and comparing some fragrances. So today we're gonna talk about that girl, that's classic, that icon, Portrait of a Lady, and two basic dupes that I have on them. One is, it's pricey, but it's not as pricey as Portrait of a Lady. And we're going to talk about the For Real dupe from a Middle Eastern company. So, which you saw all this in the thumbnail. So if you want to find out what's the deal, what's the tea, let's get to it. All right, so let's get to talking about Portrait of a Lady, Porpora, and French Portrait. So let's start off with the original. This is Portrait of a Lady. This is a decant that my girl Faith let me have when I went to visit down in Atlanta. So let me say that this has the raspberry, the cloves, the cinnamon. It's a spicy ambery rose. We know this. It is a classic. It is an icon. And I will say it is for a reason now. I got to be honest. I've learned to love this style. Now, I'm going to talk about it in reference to Poropra, because that's the one I actually own the bottle of and have had for a few years now. So this is a classic. It is very rich. It is very ambery, very spicy. Now, there is raspberry in here, but I gotta be honest, I don't get a lot of raspberry. What I get is a spiciness. I would say the raspberry gives it a little sweetness to balance out all that spice and the Bulgarian rose, and then the amber and things like that, right? So that is Portrait of a Lady. Beautiful fragrance. If it, I can honestly say I see why people love it, and I see why it is a classic, and it is classic unisex. Anybody can wear this. You're gonna smell sexy. Sexy in a very sultry, sensual way, because this isn't classic like sweet sexy. This is sensual. This is sultry. All right, then we have Porpora by Tiziana Terenzi. Now let's talk about this because what normally happens is it seems very interesting that a house like this, Terenzi, can pretty much dupe another fragrance, and everybody knows it, because also, like, if you know, Kirky is pretty much Herba Pura, but we're okay with that because they're considered a niche house and people just like they sweep that under the rug. But if other companies do it, it's like, oh my god, you're buying a dupe, when this is actually a dupe. Now, what I will say, and this is kind of like the same thing I heard about Kirky, which I no longer have, because I don't know, that scent profile, it ain't my style. But I gotta be real. I bought this because I heard someone talking about this when I first started watching fragrance videos. So I saw it, I heard about it, I heard this is sexy rose. I was like, okay, it sounds a little different. Let me get it. In the beginning, I didn't like it. My nose was not ready for it. I was like, now what was funny is that the day I finally wore it, I wasn't feeling it. But honestly, I was at somebody's house party and she was like, you smell so good. But what I will say is, like, looking at the note breakdown, what Terenzi does, and that's what everyone says, is they add to it. So it's like, oh, well, they were just inspired. Honey, they've got every note that pretty much that was in Portrait of a Lady, but then they added in like myrrh and I think benzoin. So they added in a couple of other, they added in a few more notes. Now, let me say, so it's lovely. It smells very much like Portrait of a Lady. It does. I didn't know until I put them all together, and yes, it does. So does it smell like Portrait of a Lady? It absolutely does. Here's the difference though with it, is that this one has this one, honestly, I get the sweetness a little more, the raspberry. And I think it's because they've added in, I think that with the myrrh and everything, you get a little more sweetness. So this is a little sweeter than the original. Portrait of a Lady is more spicy and ambery. So this one has the same vibe, but it does have a little sweet, it's a little sweeter on the skin. So like when you spray them on, Portrait of a Lady is going to be a little more spicy in your face, whereas this one's going to have a little sweetness to it, just a little sweetness. Now let's talk about Fragrance World's French Portrait. Now I left all this because I wanted to say, if you buy a dupe and you just really want to give it the whole full dupe, you might as well buy these, because they really do give you what you want. And I know people are like, that's so terrible. I don't think it's terrible. I find it quite amusing. So this, if you ever seen Frederic Malle box, this is what it looks like. And so it opens up, and then, you know, their bottle is going to look very similar to the Frederic Malle bottles. And you can tell that because I have this bottle right here, very similar. Very similar. And the 100 mils look very similar to this one. All right, French Portrait. Now, what I will say is that when you're dealing with these type of fragrances, a lot of times what they'll do is they will take the notes that are, it seems like they use the notes that are the most, gives them the most bang for their buck. So they don't have they might not have all of the notes that the original has, but what they have is going to give you the vibe of that fragrance. So saying that, let's talk about this one. So this one, when it opens up, when you spray it, it's a lot airier. It has a more airy quality to it. You get the vibe from it. You get the kind of spicy, rosy vibe, but you get this airiness to it. It's not quite as heavy and dense as Portrait of a Lady or even Porpora. Now, as it dries down though, spot on. And I will say this, all of these, once they dry down, I couldn't tell the difference hardly. There's a slight difference in each one, but so slight that no one would ever tell the difference and think you weren't wearing Portrait of a Lady, if that's what you said. And if they went out and tried it on, they wouldn't think, oh, that ain't the same thing. They would absolutely believe you had on the same thing, because they all are very, like I said, they're not spot on dupes, but they are like 95%. I would go with 95%, because in that when you first spray it on, that's where the 5% difference comes in. But as it dries down, they do become more and more alike. And like, I really honestly couldn't tell the difference. The one thing I will say is the Porpora has a little more, I don't know, something about it I like a little more. So talking about them all, if you have always wanted a Portrait of a Lady, you've tried it or you've just been intrigued by it, I'm going to say you don't have to get this. You can get one of these depending on your price point. Porpora you can usually find like at a discount, a lot less than Portrait of a Lady. But of course, if we really want to go there, you want to go and get this French Portrait from, Fragrance World. Don't forget, hit my Triple Traders use my Triple Traders code to get 10% off, because they are the ones who carry this. But yeah, so any of them you could use. Any of them are interchangeable. They really are. They're not going to you're not going to feel like inferior. Of course, Portrait of a Lady is Portrait of a Lady, but these two are really not they're really not inferior to it. There are just like a little differences, a little the nuances are a little different. Like I said, Porpora is a little sweeter. French Portrait is just a little bit airier. So if the denseness of Portrait of a Lady is overwhelming to you, I actually like French Portrait better. But on the dry down, you're going to get that whole Portrait of a Lady vibe. Now, which one do I like the best? To be quite honest, Porpora. because I like the sweetness, the beginning. I like the raspberry comes through a little bit more on that one. And I think because of the myrrh thing, so it has a little sweeter vibe to that spicy ambery rose. Portrait of a Lady, I gotta be honest, I'm glad I got to try it because I always thought I really wanted it because I've always heard such good things about it. Oh my God, Portrait of a Lady. But now that I've tried them, I don't need them both. So, but if you're really just, hey, you want that vibe, but you ain't trying to spend all that money, go on and get this French Portrait. I promise you. You're gonna, as they say, you're going to smell all niche-like. Niche, baby. You're going to smell niche-like. So, yeah, this is French Portrait by Fragrance World, Porpora by Tiziana Terenzi, and Portrait of a Lady. Hey, you can't go wrong with any of them. Whatever your price point is, that honestly should be what dictates what your price point is that you're willing to pay. Not saying you can afford all three of them, but what is your price point? What are you willing to pay? And listen, you don't need all three. So choose the one that you want and get that one. If you want Portrait of a Lady because you've always wanted that Frederic Malle, listen, I ain't here to tell you not to get it. If you want to go a little bit lower price point, go with the Poropra. If you really like, I just want to smell like this, I ain't trying to spend that much money, go on and get that French Portrait. All right, y'all. So that's it. If you've tried these, let me know. Put your thoughts of it in the comments as always. Thank you, my whole squad. As always, be bold, be brave, be fearless, be free. Talk to you later.